Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. For this video, I wanted to take a look at one of the biggest and most profitable franchises and merchandising IPs ever created, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The computer games and console releases of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was really a mixed bag of mostly cash grab, low effort, disappointing releases made to promote the Ninja Turtle cartoons rather than to appease gamers. So I guess it's no surprise there are only a handful of these games still worth playing today. Starting from the original 1989 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade game to the last big console release 2016's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants in Manhattan, there were over 50 games released on various computers, consoles, handhelds and arcade. Out of those 50 plus releases, I wanted to showcase what are in my opinion the top 5 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games of all time. I haven't included tablet and handheld releases as I feel the console and arcade releases were the best the franchise had to offer.
So remember, this is Cowabingo. But the Turtles for Super NES and Sega Genesis are...
Cowabunga, dude.
Well, it wouldn't be much of a top 5 without including the much loved Mega Drive Genesis version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Hyperstone Heist. And while not the definitive version out there, it definitely holds its own and delivers another excellent version of the Turtles in Time arcade machine. Released in December 1992 by Konami, who also developed both arcade games, it's also known as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Return of the Shredder in Japan. There's only 5 levels in Hyperstone Heist, but they are longer than the SNES and arcade versions, combining level design elements of both Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the arcade game and its sequel Turtles in Time. There's 6 boss characters including Tatsu, an exclusive only found in Hyperstone Heist, and a few familiar faces such as Baxter Stockman, Rocksteady, Leatherface, Krang, and Super Shredder making up the rest. The SNES version of Turtles in Time really outdone the Genesis here with over double the amount of boss characters. The Genesis did have a couple of advantages over its SNES rival, having more background layers, less flicker and more frames of animation for all characters. It also displayed more characters on screen at any one time. However, colours took a noticeable drop in quality, with the bright, vibrant colours of the SNES and arcade being almost reduced to half due to the much smaller colour palette of the Genesis, resulting in a much darker, less cartoony look. Another small downgrade was from the move list, with the ability to hurl foot soldiers into the screen being removed. It's worth noting that the SNES version made a very clever use of the screen throw, as we will see later on in the video. Sound effects overall are quite good without being outstanding, but the soundtrack and level tracks themselves are all fantastic and offer yet another great rendition of the epic soundtrack of the original arcade game. The voice sampling, with the Turtles' voices in particular sounding slightly garbled and low-pitched, is the only obvious negative you could point a finger at. The bare minimum of voice sampling is included in Hyperstone Heist, but again, just like the smaller colour palette, it really doesn't affect playability. Where Hyperstone Heist shines the most is in its gameplay, with great enemy AI and fast fluid gameplay. It takes a bit of a reduction in visuals and sound compared to the SNES, but nothing that affects gameplay, and it still looks fantastic. It's one of my favourite Mega Drive games, and indeed a top 5 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game also. Back in 1989, when the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game was released, Konami had arguably the best looking beat 'em up out there in terms of visuals and sound. In 4-player simultaneous mode it was even better, with super intense gameplay and a huge number of animated sprites to deal with on screen with no loss of quality or slowdown. It was just something you could never experience on a home computer or console at this time. Combine that with the awesome visuals and that bass-pumping soundtrack and superb voice samples from the 80s cartoon, and it really was a showstopper in its original 4-player cabinet rendition.
Good, good. Still, it ain't getting any prettier. Watch your mouth, fine bull.
Just have a look at this great sequence from level 2. There's always something going on, even in the background. Playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade today on MAME, I can honestly say it's a lot of fun, but it has some serious difficulty issues. And I know this game was designed to eat quarters from obsessed Turtles fans, so spiking the difficulty is kind of inevitable, but unfortunately this game is almost unplayable sometimes, even on easy. In 4-player simultaneous mode, it's a much better experience, as it's a little easier. 4 turtles are always better than 1. The move list is kind of basic compared to later games, but it's adequate, and the visuals, sound and intense action, especially with 4 players, keeps you engaged until the end. It's the OG of Ninja Turtle games, and while not as good an experience as playing it on the original arcade cabinet, those great visuals and awesome soundtrack are enough to make this a top 5 Turtles game. In 2009, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Turtles franchise, Ubisoft decided to reignite the Turtles IP, and not surprisingly, it was one of the best-selling games on its initial release in the Xbox store and then in the PlayStation 3 store a few months later. Turtles in Time Reshelled retains all the elements of what makes a Turtles game great, and added some of the best visuals we've seen so far in any Turtles game. Some of the level terrain and backgrounds really do look outstanding, like the green ooze found on level 3's Sewer Surfing, and the flowing lava background on level 5's Prehistoric Turtlesaurus. The soundtrack, while not quite reaching the lofty highs of the original arcade games, is still quite good, with a nice remix of the original game's Pizza Power theme tune, minus the vocals still being very catchy. And while I do prefer the original Turtles in Time soundtrack, this version still complements the gameplay nicely. The sound effects really take advantage of the improved hardware from the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Never has a foot soldier ass kicking sounded so good. And even with the music turned off, the game still sounds awesome. My only complaint is the game is a bit too short by today's standards. I know it's basically a remake with improved visuals, but I would have loved to see some selectable paths, hidden rooms or warp levels similar to the level design seen in Streets of Rage 4 and the amazing Paprium. Difficulty is identical to the arcade game, with areas where it's almost unavoidable not to take damage, and just like the original Turtles in Time arcade game, it's almost impossible to selectively throw foot soldiers. Instead, it's just completely random. There's just no way to do it on purpose, and as a result, makes the game way more difficult than it should be. Perhaps a better option for Ubisoft would have been a remake of the SNES Turtles in Time instead of a remake of the arcade Turtles in Time, which had the very same control issues. These negatives aside, it's essentially the original Turtles in Time arcade game with the bonus of updated 3D visuals and much better sound quality, and for that reason it deserves a top 5 position. If Ubisoft had put more focus on developing new levels and balancing the gameplay, I feel it could have been better than the original. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time was released into the arcades in 1991 by Konami, and it was more of the same bonkers arcade action of the first game, but now with enhanced visuals and sound, a new equally brilliant soundtrack and new moves for each character. The visuals got a complete overhaul, colours and background art really are outstanding, and it's a much better looking game than the 1989 original, with more colours, more animations and even some lighting and weather effects on certain levels. All the familiar Turtles comedy from the cartoons are still included in this game, and the Turtles will interact with their environment in some hilarious ways, whether it's falling down manholes, getting their toes stubbed or getting roasted by a foot soldier.
Forgot the sun cream.
Just like the cartoons, there's always a Turtles catchphrase for every situation.
Pizza time.
The level intros have to take the award for some of the most humorous level names ever seen in a video game, along with an equally hilarious preview animation of the boss character within the level.
Technodrome, the final shell shock. Prehistoric Turtlesaurus. Sewer Surfing. Bury my shell at Wounded Knee. Starbase, where no turtle has gone before.
It's not perfect, however. There's a few control quirks, such as the difficulty in getting your character to throw foot soldiers and the borderline cheap boss fights, but it's forgivable because the core gameplay is just so engaging and fun. Special mention must go to the outstanding soundtrack and a totally radical attract mode theme tune called Pizza Power, which I also featured in my top 10 retro game music video.
Pizza Power!
Because it's a coin-op, the balance is always going to be veering on the side of difficult, and just like the first Turtle arcade game, the enemy AI can be extremely cheap, but it's still a hell of a lot more balanced overall, and again, just like the first game, it's easier and more enjoyable in 4-player mode. It's hard not to like Turtles in Time Arcade. It's a true evolution of the first game, and while it does suffer from the same difficulty issues, the engaging gameplay and awesome visuals and sound more than make up for it. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It really motivates me to continue making interesting videos like this one. If you have any games you'd like covered, drop a comment down below and I will try and cover them in a future video. Released in 1992 by Konami, entitled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time, with the 4 added to serve as a sequel to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, on the NES. The exceptionally good SNES version of Turtles in Time actually managed to keep up with the arcade in terms of visuals and sound. At first glance, there's a few minor visual differences between the two, with the arcade having more detailed sprites and backgrounds, and more animations displayed for the turtles and the enemy sprites. The SNES version gets an extra Technodrome level, a new vertically scrolling level using the SNES Mode 7 effects, 5 extra boss characters, a time trial mode, as well as a 2-player versus match where you can choose any one of the 4 turtles to fight each other. The SNES version of Turtles in Time really was quite an achievement, and one of the few arcade ports that you could actually say was better than the original game. Gameplay is much improved, and the awkward foot soldier throwing mechanic of the arcade version is finally addressed here and thankfully fixed. They even added in a shredder boss battle that incorporates it, allowing each turtle to throw foot soldiers into the screen, with each successful throw resulting in Shredder's battle tank taking damage. A very clever idea that's super fun to play. There's a few downgrades, of course, due to the obvious hardware restrictions the SNES had compared to the dedicated arcade board. As mentioned, there's less detail on sprites and backgrounds, a few of the turtle move animations were either reduced or changed, and the number of enemy sprites displayed on screen was reduced. The simultaneous 4-player option, of course, was dropped here, as it was in the Mega Drive Genesis version, with only 2 turtles being selectable instead of 4. In the sound department, the outstanding title track Pizza Power was removed, and most of the voice samples in-game were removed for the turtles. Unfortunately, all of the voice samples were removed for the boss characters, but voice samples were retained for the level names at the start of each level.
Prehistoric Turtlesaurus.
Sound effects throughout are outstanding, almost as good as Turtles in Time Reshelled, with crunchy impact hits on foot soldiers and rock soldiers, really making up for the downgrading of voice samples. Difficulty is set just right, and with each turtle now having the ability to throw and body slam foot soldiers selectively rather than randomly as we saw in the arcade version, it's a bit easier and a lot less frustrating. Some might say it's possibly a bit too easy for experienced gamers, and for those people I'd say maybe try the arcade version if you want a steeper challenge. But for me, this game has the best balance of all 5 games. Even with the hardware restrictions and lack of a 4-player co-op option, Turtles in Time on the SNES still manages to come out on top. It also retains the brilliant soundtrack of the original, and as mentioned, improves the in-game sound effects over the original arcade game. So if you're looking for your Turtles fix, look no further than Turtles in Time on the SNES. It's still the best Turtles game out there today, and indeed one of the best games ever released on the system. With the remake of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge nearing a release date on all platforms, it's great to see the re-emergence of this IP sticking to its arcade roots, with the classic look and brawling mechanics used in Turtles Arcade and Turtles in Time. Stay tuned for the upcoming release of this game, where I'll give my own review and see where it might stand in the current top 5 list. Can it be better than Turtles in Time? Check out the preview on my channel where you get to see the first 2 levels, and leave a comment if you like the new ideas they've included in this game.